Do you know the comedian Andrew Schulz? Andrew Schulz. Have you heard of him?
Yep.
Okay, so he's in hot water. There's a clip that I'm going to show you. That's sort of self-explanatory, but essentially he had two very popular YouTubers, Shits and Gigs, I think they're called, on his podcast, his Flagrant podcast.
Mm-hmm.
And they were talking about how men change once they start dating a black girl, like their style or whatever. And these two guys, the Shits and Gigs, I don't think they meant it in like when they start engaging that conversation. I don't think that they were intending to sort of like disparage black women. But then Andrew Schultz, in true Andrew Schultz fashion, jumped in the conversation and started saying, I think pretty harmful things about black women. And I think he was trying to be funny, but there's a lot of backlash. So let's take a look at it.
Okay.
And see what you think.
I want to hear it.
All right.
Yeah, so you'll see a guy who's had a black girlfriend. All of a sudden, he's got buzz cut, like clean shape up.
Bro.
I like that.
I like that. They shave their hair because they start losing it. Because they're so stressed being around this black girl complaining about shit all the fucking time. That's why they gotta shave their hair.
Nah, bro. White guys with black girlfriends, they
grow a beard because there's
up.
more cushion when they get slapped the fuck out of. That's hilarious. I think the black girlfriend effect. It might be a protective instinct, bro.
You think?
Protective.
Yeah. Do you guys have you ever had black girlfriends?
Yeah.
Have you ever had white girls?
Yeah.
Yep. Oh wow. Okay. What's your favorite?
We love them all.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
We love them all.
Yeah.
That means white.
That means white.
Hey, let me get a US translation.
Kendrick fans, get him!
Okay, so there are a few things going on here. On the one hand, Andrew Schultz is feeding into this stereotype that, black women are aggressive and mean, and you have to protect yourself from them being their boyfriend. Well, I forgot my second point, but what do you think about that first point?
I mean, in the context, I mean, it just seems like comedy to me. Being a white man, it's hard for me to understand what the response. I just know people who would laugh. I know black men and black women who would just think that's funny, and I know black men and okay. This is what I think. It's hard for me to really answer. I probably would be more careful than that.
Mm-hmm.
But
I mean, you're even careful with me.
Yeah, but I don't think that, again, it's so, like, I'm part of my advantage, I think, over Andrew Schultz is I grew up in New York City. Like, I've spent the majority of my life here. So it's like the diversity isn't just that people are different colors and ethnicities and religions, but you meet people of color who are really subdued and mellow and really aggressive, and white people who are super aggressive, and white men who are very effeminate. So on top of the diversity of culture, you get diversity of personality and style. And that's why racism starts to seem stupid, because you're like, wait a minute, who's cheap? Like, so-and-so is the most cheap. You know what I mean? So there's that. But I was being dropped off at my building by Eddie Flacco, Bobby Cruz, and a guy named Iran, and I don't know what his last name is, but they're all Hispanic. My doorman comes out to open the door for me, and he's Hispanic. I said, Alex, these guys are from the wrong side of the track. Don't ruin my street cred. And two of the guys were laughing hysterically. One guy wasn't. I get to the park the next day. He's like, dude, I need to talk about what you said. I said, fuck you, bro. I said, I'm making fun of me that I'm not cool enough to hang out with you guys, and you're getting sensitive because I said you're from the wrong side of the tracks. And the guy lives upstate in some white neighborhood. I'm just not, and everybody who was in on that was like, Iran, and he goes, all right. And he kind of backed down. He wanted to be offended by what I said, and two people who actually, one of them really is a little bit, like less fortunate than the other two. They were just like, what are you talking about? That's Eric. We're having fun. So I don't know how to gauge this, honestly.
I get it. On the one hand, yes, he is a comedian. And, for me, Andrew Schultz, just personally, I don't think he's like funny. I think he has funny moments. Like, there are times where I'm like, oh, what he said was kind of funny. but he's not someone that I'm like, he is funny, right?
Yeah.
Because I realized that watching him, especially like on his podcast and that sort of thing, he practices what, you know, I call like mean comedy. And it's like, it is funny, but it's only funny to a certain degree and that to me is not necessarily a sign of like true funniness. If like your funny is like, just kind of like taking like a jab at someone all the time. That to me is like a bully turned comedian. And I know a lot of those people. I used to date someone who was like that.
Bullied,
like, he's
bullied.
He's not a comedian. He's a bully, and then he turned it into a career.
Right, and sometimes it's right, and sometimes it's people who were bullied who then turn being a bully into a career. Don Rickles, American comedian Don Rickles. I think he's from Queens, actually. Very, world famous. I mean, huge to his generation, and he's just mean. He says very mean things to people. I'm going to tell you what I think. You just said something, and when I saw Andrew Schulz do the Tom Brady roast, I mean, he had some funny moments, but you know what it is? He's not likable. When I see Dave Chappelle, I want to have dinner with Dave Chappelle. When I was hanging out with Robert Kelly the other night, and I got to hang out with Jim Norton. I have a picture of me with my arm around Jim Norton. Like, as I have my arm around Jim Norton, I'm like, I was totally comfortable hugging him because I like him. Robert Kelly's a likable guy. Bill Burr is snarky, but he still comes across as
he's very likable. But also another thing with Bill Burr is funny. Like,
he's so...
Bill Burr might actually be like the #1 comedian.
He's amazing. He's amazing.
Like, you can't even compare Andrew Schulz to Bill Burr. They're on whole.
No, it's not.
I blame Joe Rogan for the rise of Andrew Schulz. I don't think he would have risen had not, because Joe Rogan all of a sudden started like bringing him on his show and like hyping him up or whatever. And I mean, yeah, maybe it's his buddy. He thinks it's funny, whatever. But I saw like a quick rise in his career after that Joe Rogan stamp.
Right.
That's not to say that Andrew Schulz doesn't deserve to have space in the comedy world. He does. He's still funny. He's a comedian, but I do think that he's pushed that like mean comedy a little bit too far. And I remember the second point that I was gonna about what was said. It's about Black women. Not only the whole like you have to protect yourself against Black women, but also the whole like that they're not dateable, right? Because of this.
Yeah, I don't understand that.
That was also another thing.
Right. And again, so this is like the thing. I don't know where he grew up. I don't know how he grew up. But when you grow up with a TV version of Black women, and then you go to Van Cortlandt Park and Black wives are with their Black husbands sitting there barbecuing and picnicking while the men were all playing paddleball, and I know their wife and kids for 4 years, that becomes absurd to a person who's actually in the mix with people of different ethnic. You know what I'm saying? And I'm not bragging like, oh, look at me. I'm so diverse. But I grew up in a city. Now I don't live. I mean, I play at Van Cortlandt Park. This isn't even Manhattan, where everyone in the world. This is under the elevated train trestle. This is, a rougher part of New York City. And you see these women who are like family women who are raising their children with their husbands, and they're married for 30 years. So Andrew Schultz's perception of a Black woman just becomes stupid to me. But let me ask you a question. Now he's with Shits and Giggles. What are their names?
Shits and Gigs or something like that?
I would never call myself Shits. I mean, what a fucking dumb name. But they seem really likable. They seem like they're kind of like with those accents and they're funny.
Very likable.
So what happens when I'm the snarky white comedian and I'm on with the two lovable Black guys and we're like, ga, 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 ga? Do I get carried away because I feel like, hey, I'm with my boys and like all of a sudden I feel like I have some kind of extra cred to go over the line? Is he reacting to their comfortability with? And
you're very perceptive, because I think another thing that put a battery in Andrew Schultz's back is also his like affiliation with Charlemagne the God, because I think that sort of made him, because Charlemagne the God in the Black community, he has a certain status, right?
Yeah,
so it's almost like if you're co-signed by Charlemagne the God, you're okay with us Black people. That's kind of, he's one of those, right? And so I think that's also something that he's maybe using a little bit unfortunately, he's like kind of pushing the envelope a little bit on that, because it's one thing to be like, I mean, you and I, right? I'm black, you're white, whatever. I mean, we joke around and we talk about race. I mean, I make white jokes, you make black jokes or whatever, right? But there's still like a limit, you know what I mean?
Well, there's got to be respect, and I'm not gonna,
It's
and
got to
I'm
be
not, and I'm not gonna, based on you and my mentor Roberto Sharp, I'm not gonna go on somebody's podcast and start shit talking about black people. Oh well, I know Sarah and Roberto. I can do this. That's
right.
like so. That's kind of. But again, the likable and non-likable thing. Now, the thing that's interesting is I find Joe Rogan likable. So I'm
Yeah.
almost surprised that he gets on with Andrew Schulz the way he does.
I am too, because for me, Joe Rogan, he's a special breed.
He's an incredible.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like when I see him interact with people, he feels he feels very genuine, and I'm not surprised by his huge success. He feels like a good person, like he feels like someone that does the right thing. Does that make sense?
Yeah. No,
that's why I like Joe Rogan's comedy, because I mean, he says like some like offensive things here and there, whatever, right? But
did you see his latest one? Oh my God.
I did. I think he's really funny, and for the most part, I think that his jokes are like well thought out. Like he takes you somewhere, right? I don't really think that Andrew Schulz takes you somewhere. He's just mean. And here's another thing. Okay, I love Theo Von, and you do too, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I do want to pose this question, because
would you smash Joe Rogan?
Oh yeah,
you would.
Wait, not if it would ruin my chances with Theo Von.
Okay. Well, they are buds, but now let's talk about you smashing Joe Rogan. No, and the reason I'm saying this,
I didn't say I would smash Joe Rogan.
You did too. I said, would you smash him? You said
I would. I didn't say I would. Does that make sense? Like he's an attractive person. He's an attractive man. He looks nice. He speaks nice. He's funny. Like he's
his
an attractive
success
guy.
is
right. But he's a married man, and I respect. I respect all that,
okay, right. You wouldn't smash him because he's married. Okay, got it. So,
oh my God.
All right, so check it out. So now Sheila thinks one part of his success is that he's masculine, because now again, in the black community there are plenty of masculine men, but for white guys there are just so many effeminate superstar men. They're like, they're very conscious of the way their threads look and all this other stuff. And Sheila, who's more inclined, I mean, I'm a barbarian compared to her male friends. I mean, I think her friends and her friend's husband are like, how did this happen? They just think I'm I'm just like some kind of firecracker, loose cannon. But Joe Rogan being masculine, is that part of it? I mean, the guy's buff. He does martial arts. Is that any of it?
No. Do you know Mike Israetel?
No.
All right, I'll show you a picture later.
Is he somebody you would smash?
No, I'm just saying, like, it's just I just brought him up as an example of, like, he's a bodybuilder, like, he's a buff guy. I wouldn't smash him, right? Like, just because you're buff doesn't mean that you're attractive. Just like a skinny guy can be very attractive. Like, I find Theo Von attractive, right? He's not a buff guy, but I also do find muscular men attractive. So it's like it doesn't really have to do with. I feel like attractiveness is like a package thing, right? It's not just the muscle or the looks or the way you talk or the way. That's why Andrew Schulz to me isn't like attractive at all, because at least if he had the personality, or if he was at least actually really funny, or if he actually like looked really nice with his like freaking mustache that signals, you know what?
Fuck, that's, you know what? A Hitler mustache would be like proper evil. It's like a fucking Gomez Addams from Addams Family mustache. Ugh.
It's not cute. And I'm just saying, like, you want to talk about, black women not being dateable and being aggressive and this and that. No, listen, like, you're not the person to talk about these things. You're not Andrew Schulz. You got a co-sign from Rogan and Charlamagne the God. That's why you are where you are, not because you're acting funny. So like, take a seat. You know what I mean?
Seat. Yeah,
but I did want to ask you this. It was the Theo Von thing before we, he does also sort of like race bait here and there. You know what I mean? He's always kind of asking his black friends, like, oh, like, he just asks a lot of like questions as though, like he doesn't know anything about black people and like whatever. But he does it in a way that's like, he's not like attacking or, you know, being hateful or being mean. Like he asks questions out of like pure curiosity. Just like the other day when you asked me, like, what does it mean to be ashy? You're just curious. Like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? You're not using that information to then later on go and say that, you know, Black people are ashy. You know what I mean? And that's what Andrew Schulz does. It's like he like got in the Black community, he learned all these things, and now he thinks he knows it, like stuff about the Black community, so that he can like regurgitate back out into the world.
That, well, and again, that's just not likable. It's funny you say that about ashy, because I always think of, oh yeah, I just lost the sync up. Are you done? Do I have a minute?
Yeah, right.
So one of my family members, and not a distant family member, made a comment about Indians invading his neighborhood. And I was like, dude, what? And then I was jogging, and I saw this probably like 25-year-old Indian girl in the neighborhood walking her dog. And she was the most stunning woman in the world. Like, she was unbelievable. And I was just thinking, if my relative saw this woman right now, and he's a hound dog of a man, I'm like, I would get him to shut up. I'd be like, really? You're not going to go on a date with that woman because she's Indian? So as men, like, you know, I think of Alexander the Great and the way he was intrigued with all of these beautiful people from different parts of the world. I don't understand how anybody can be like, oh, Black women are ashy. It's like, yeah, and then you just think of the most stunning people or the funniest people. It's like, I don't know how these little things become a topic of conversation when you think of the greatness of so many people. I'm blown away by this. Yeah, and I don't like Andrew. I hate Andrew Schulz now, and the fucking hipster mustache. You know what? Like, get over. What are you in freaking Williamsburg, Brooklyn? What do you live on Bedford Avenue?
And here's another thing. Like, what's the saying? Hate begets hate, or whatever, right?
Hate begets hate.
He put so much hate out there. Like, we don't even really talk about people like this. You know what I mean? So he's getting this treatment in return because, like, you want to talk about. And here's another thing that I would like to add. So there's this like idea of like what Black people or like Black women, right, are like, right? And then when you meet someone who's not like that, and you're like, oh, well, you're not Black. And I get that a lot, right? Where people are like, oh, you're not Black. You're not
What did
Black.
somebody say on one of our comments? I saw a comment.
Am Black. I'm 100% African. How about that, right? But then you're going to be like, oh, but your hair looks like this, or your features, or you talk like this, so you can't be Black. No, I am 100% Black, period. You know? But it just goes to the whole, like, this is what Black is, and, you know, we're going to lump everyone together, and that's what it is. You know what I'm saying? Like, some of the sweetest, like, most, like, smartest, submissive, whatever guys like these days, women that I've met have been both Black or white, whatever. It hasn't like boiled down to race. That's what I'm saying, you know?
Well, can you imagine, can you just imagine that somebody would be like, well, Eric is white, and therefore this is his personality, this is the way he dates, this is what he wears. That is like insane. But yeah, so Andrew Schulz is kind of doing it back. Look, do you hear about the hipster who burnt his mouth eating pizza?
No.
He bit into it before it was cool. Anyway, it's just like that somebody needs to rip that mustache off his. I wonder
if be on Joe Rogan, not freaking Andrew Schulz.
What was that?
I said, see, you should be on Joe Rogan, not Andrew Schulz.
You know, Robert Kelly, you know, who our kids do jiu-jitsu together. One day I text messaged him and said, hey man, what's up? He's like, dude, I got to call you later. I'm about to go on Rogan. I'm like, what? It's just crazy. You know, going on Rogan is like a big deal, you know?
Yeah.
It's, I mean, the guy's a kingmaker, really. But with Andrew Schulz, look, again, all the comedians, I literally have a picture of me hugging, like with my arm around Jim Norton the other night. I want to hang out with Jim Norton. I want to hang out with Dave Chappelle. And I don't even want him to be funny. I just want to pick the man's brain, you know? And yeah, it just, Andrew Schulz just doesn't give me, as a matter of fact, and he laughs at his own jokes a lot, which is okay sometimes, but he's like, he's signaling where the punchline is. It's like, bro, if you're that funny, we don't need you to tell us where to laugh.
And, you know, I can even tell that people find him annoying. Even his friends, I can tell they like find him annoying, but it's almost like, wait, because he got the Joe Rogan stamp of approval, like now we're all nice to him, or I don't know, but like I can tell, I can really, if you watch like him interview people, like people laugh along with him and everything, but he's not likable. He's not
No,
likable.
I didn't like him. The first time I really watched him do comedy was at the Tom Brady roast, and I was not super impressed. I mean, I thought he was funny, but obnoxious for sure.
Mm-hmm. I did think he had like some funny moments in his special. He put out a special, I think, on YouTube a few years ago, like on his own.
Mhm.
And I think it had like funny moments. Listen, I will give credit where credit is due. I'm not saying he's never funny. He has funny moments, but for
Mhm.
the most part, it's mean humor. And I think, you know, he's crossed the line now. And now he's also like, you know, doubling down. He's not apologizing after, you know, causing all this outrage, which is also to me adds to his unlikability, because it's one thing to stand your ground when it's like, listen, I stand by what I did or said. But in this case, what you're standing by, you know, stereotyping and hurting a bunch of Black women and being, I mean, I don't know, because it wasn't even funny. It wasn't even like real humor. You know what I mean?
Well,
It was just really like mean.
yeah, I don't know. I wonder what Charlemagne the God, who annoys me and I love, and he annoys me. He's an, you know, again, I reserve the right to dislike Charlemagne the God, even though he's Black. I'm not a signaler. Like sometimes he just like his politics. He's got his head up his backside sometimes, but super smart, super entertaining. And I wonder what he thinks of what was said. You know, but then you got to be careful with that too, because you know there was a clip of Joe Rogan using the N word once, and the context it wasn't. It was like a thing, and the clip was isolated and was put out, and it was embarrassing, I'm sure, for Joe Rogan. But then The Rock puts out a statement like, "I'm disappointed in Joe Rogan. Da, 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 look at me." And then I see a picture of him telling jokes, going, "Oh, ching chong bing bong," and I'm like, "Okay, my children are half Asian. Why do you get to do that, you racist?" Like, in other words, like if you know you're a racist or tell racist style jokes, The Rock, you need to shut the before you throw Joe Rogan under the bus. And you know, you can say it's, you know, it's an easier target and it's not as sensitive, whatever. But if you're doing it yourself, don't throw stones. It's just the whole thing is chaos. But I
Yeah.
think, Bill Burr's wife is African American, but I think likable people can get away with more. I think we all want. I think a lot of people just find Andrew Schulz unlikable, so now they're like, yeah, pounce, pounce,
Well, here's also
pounce.
the difference between Bill Burr joking about Black people and Andrew Schulz, right? Bill Burr is actually like the way he jokes about Black people, he's the reaction that we have when we watch his like hear his jokes is like, yeah, he's right. Yeah. We totally do that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He's able to elicit that response, and that makes us feel like, all right, he's kind of one of us, right?
Mm-hmm.
And Schultz is not doing that. Like, yeah, we're kind of, yeah, we are like that. It's
You're
uh
like, shut the fuck up.
like he says offensive things, and then you're like, these two guys, they didn't know, like they laughed and everything, but then after they actually went and said that they were kind of in fight or flight mode because they were like on this huge popular podcast with Andrew Schulz, and Andrew Schulz is really popular, and they didn't really know how to react when he
Right.
was saying all those things. Like, you know, maybe they didn't want to be like Debbie Downers and be like, oh, hold on, you know,
Yeah.
but weren't really comfortable with what he
Yeah.
was saying, and that's not what Bill Burr does. That's why
Oh no,
he's
yeah. Bill
stellar.
Burr's.
Yeah.
Well, Bill Burr also throws white people under the bus as he's doing it, which is part of the. You know, do you know the comedian Lisa Lampanelli?
Oh, I love her. Why did she stop?
I don't
She's
know.
so
She
good.
she's so funny,
The
but
best.
she apparently she's either married to or at one point was in a long-term relationship with a Black man, and she was telling these jokes and they were funny, right?
Yeah.
But she wasn't the problem. And most of the people in the audience weren't the problem. The problem was, I remember a camera scanning, and these two kind of like jacked up redneck looking dudes with baseball caps and like the steroid vein through the middle of their head, like were like, oh, and like high fiving each other. And you could see that they were just missing the, you know what I mean? Like, in other words, she's being funny and she has this Black husband, and black people are laughing and white people are laughing, and then there are these two guys who look like, yeah, she's so funny, let's like go burn a cross on some black guy's lawn. Like, you know, some people just take shit the wrong way. Like, some people aren't mature enough to handle the beauty of what Bill Burr does.
Yeah.
And you know, and that's like a real thing. And by the way, I had a guy just start crap talking, Spanish guy, just start talking about Chinese people. Like really mean things. And I had my paddle in my hand. I said, dude, if you say another word, I'm going to crack you in the face. I literally was like that, because what he's saying is that my son and my daughter are targets to him. So it's when I see that level, and then all of a sudden you just say, how funny is this? You know, now you got me all liberal.
That's a very good point. And that also speaks to the fact that Bill Burr, yes, he does have more license to say certain things because his wife is black.
And his children.
And his children, right? And that goes to what you just said, that you're going to feel a different type of defensiveness now that you're also, you know, when you have children that are biracial or, you know, whatever. So it's going to hit different. And Andrew Schulz, he doesn't really have, other than being friends with, you know, a few black people, it's like you haven't really proven to care about the community at all, the black community whatsoever. So no, you don't have license to say these things. Dance.